Welcome to the review of The Quest for the Rings. Quest for the Rings is actually a board game which was supplemented with a video game. I'm not going to be covering the board game, but I will be covering the game for Odyssey 2. Before we start, let's watch a nice commercial on the game.
Wizard of Odyssey? Is the keyboard really the key to greater challenge in video games?
Of course it is. You can play strategy games like Quest for the Rings. Plan your strategy on the game board. Use the keyboard to change heroes, enemies, places. Be a wizard. Outwit fiery dragons. Take that, dragon. We wizards hate to lose. The Master Strategy series, only from Odyssey 2, where the keyboard is the key to greater challenge.
Buy Odyssey, get $82 worth of free games, including Quest for the Rings and Pickaxe Pete.
The game was created in 1981 by Magnavox. So it's a two-player game, and the whole purpose is to get 10 rings in order to beat it. And first you have to choose for each player the class or race they're going to play. So in this case we've chosen Warrior and Wizard. On the original game, there was an overlay that you would put on the keyboard of the Odyssey 2 in order to choose certain things. When using an emulator, we don't need to do that. We can get away from it. So the green guy and the orangish guy are the two players. You just saw the sword swing. That was from the warrior, who's the orange character. The green character just got killed by being touched by that pink orc. There's, as you can see, different types of enemies on the screen. The white ones are also orcs, and then you have a dragon. And I'll get into the details later about what they do, but essentially the pink orc and the white orc run toward you, and if they touch you, you die. So one hit in this game and you're dead. But you can come back with infinite lives. As long as there's one player still alive, then they can still try to get the ring. You'll notice that toward the bottom there, that white and yellow flashing ring is the ring. If you are the warrior and you kill an orc or some other enemy, they disappear from the screen, but they'll actually start coming back. You saw on the bottom right there that orc came back. Now there are certain types of monsters that the warrior cannot kill with his sword. He can't kill the spiders, the pterodactyls, or the dragon. Essentially, he can just kill the orcs. As you can see, attacking that spider with the sword just knocks it back. And as you can see, the same thing happens attacking the gargoyles. Now, when an enemy touches you, there's different effects. Here, when a gargoyle touches you, it devours you in a creepy manner. Same way with the spider. Really creepy feel for a 1981 game. The dragon that always runs on horizontal lines is extremely tough. If you get close toward his horizontal lines, he'll shoot fireballs at you and run toward you really quickly. And of course you can't outrun him because it's designed to be fast and catch you. It can also shoot its fireball all the way across the screen like this. Pretty crazy. So the next character you can play as is the wizard. So we'll demonstrate what his ability is. Instead of using a sword, he casts a magic spell which paralyzes enemies. And the spell actually has a nice range to it. If you hold down the fire button, the fireball that he shoots will keep going. And if you release it, then it's a shorter range and you can do rapid fire. The paralysis, of course, is temporary. But the good news is it does work on spiders as well. So here this spider gets paralyzed almost indefinitely. It can also paralyze the gargoyles, although it doesn't seem to work as long on them. It can even paralyze the dragon for a split second, but the dragon's just too dangerous to even try it. The next character you can play as is the Phantom. The Phantom has the ability to move inside walls. So if you hold down the fire button and walk, you can go inside the wall. And finally, we have the Changeling, which has the ability to turn invisible. So here our orange character is the Changeling, and you'll notice he just disappeared from the screen. That doesn't mean that he is immune to enemies. If an enemy happens to walk in the coordinates where he's located, he will die. And while you move when you're invisible, you can't tell where you're at. Also, the Changeling moves extremely slow when he is invisible. You can release the fire button to appear back on the screen, and then all of a sudden the enemies will start moving toward you again. You'll notice the enemies are starting to go toward the ring. That's what happens by default if you have a Changeling that's hidden. The enemies will try to aggregate right around the ring to prevent you from getting there easily. The dragon, of course, is completely oblivious and just keeps walking back and forth. Doesn't care unless you get close. Sometimes if the monsters are aggregated around the ring, you have to reappear and try to coax them away. As soon as you disappear, they go right back. Now there are different types of terrain or screens in the game. Here is the Inferno Halls. If you touch these red walls, even as a Changeling or a Phantom, you will die. There's also these invisible walls that shows you at first, and then they're invisible until you bump into one, and then all of a sudden they'll reappear. They're called the Crystal Cavern, I believe, in the game. So once you finally do reach a ring, the screen flashes, and it shows at the upper right corners who got the points. So now we can talk a little bit about advantages and disadvantages of each character type. So of course the sword is very useful with getting the orcs out of the way, but not too useful against dragons and other tough creatures because of the range being so short. So here you can knock a spider away a little bit, and remember your goal is to get the ring. So if you're playing with another player and you can distract monsters long enough for the other character to reach, then you've accomplished your mission. So depending on the type of terrain, it can help certain characters. Like here, this is actually working out pretty well for the warrior because the other monsters were kind of blocked behind the walls. So the wizard can be very useful since he can even paralyze the gargoyles and let one of the other characters get to the ring pretty quickly as well. The wizard also works great if you can shoot an orc right in front of the dragon, because the dragon cannot move past the orc. So you can keep paralyzing the orc and the dragon just stands there, not able to attack you. Now the wizard can't shoot through walls unless he's standing right next to the wall on the inside, such as that. It's kind of interesting how it works that way. The Phantom is great for aggregating the monsters. You just get inside the wall and all the orcs and others will go right toward the wall, but be careful not to get too close or touch them because you'll die instantly. And sometimes I notice spiders can actually even go right through the walls. It's been pretty inconsistent though. In this case, he gets stuck. It's very strange, but there's got to be some type of pattern that I wasn't able to figure out. Now the big disadvantage to Phantoms is in the terrain types where there's moving walls. It makes it feel kind of like the game Frogger, where you're trying to constantly get away from the enemies chasing after you, and at least the walls are consistently moving, so they always appear to go to the right. So it does allow you to have a little bit of strategy. Of course, the Changeling's whole strategy is to sneak their way to the ring. So here we just keep reappearing for a split second so we can see where we're at, and then just keep walking downward very slowly but surely. Even the dragon is not capable of seeing the Changeling. And depending on where the terrain has blocked the ring, it can be almost impossible to get to it with the Changeling if all the monsters surround it. In this case, it's pretty wide open because they're all kind of stacked on each other. And there we have it. Here we get touched even though we're invisible and get killed by an orc, as you can see. Now, some character classes or races work well together. For example, the Phantom and the Changeling are pretty good combinations. The Phantom can go inside a wall and aggregate all the monsters, while the Changeling navigates their way slowly but surely toward the ring. Of course, this wouldn't work in the Inferno screen. So as you can see, you can walk straight down, even in the open as a Changeling, because all the monsters are too busy with the Phantom. So once again, you can use the orc strategy and use your Changeling to run down very slowly on the opposite side of the orc that's blocking the dragon. Sometimes the dragon can go right through the orc. Once you get to 10 rings, even if it is a mix between the green and orange player, you win the game. And then what happens is the screen just seems to flash random colors very slowly and play some irritating sounds that it has, and the game's over. You're not even told, congratulations, you won, or anything. At first, I let the game just sit here for many minutes just to see what would happen, and unfortunately nothing happens. Now, interestingly enough, you can walk around while the game is flashing like this. In fact, you can even walk through the screen on the right side, and if you keep moving right, you'll eventually come out on the left side. Quite quirky. It is really entertaining, the funny graphics and animations when you get killed. Like here, you start squirming around and then your character suddenly disappears like he was toasted from the fireball. You can even swing your sword while you're still dying. I enjoyed these death animations more than I really should be allowed. One time I even was able to hitch a deadly piggyback ride on the dragon. So in closing, I'd just like to say that this was a game way ahead of its time. You got to keep in mind that this was 1981. And this was just part of the game. Remember, there's a whole board game. While the sound is pretty awful and can be kind of irritating, the variety on the terrain and screens and all the entertaining death scenes makes this game a lot of fun. And there is quite a bit of strategy, believe it or not, even though you only have 4 characters to choose from. The Quest for the Rings is a very challenging team-oriented game. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you next time.